Why do you think so many people struggle with what they let into their life and controlling that aspect as well?
I think society as a whole, we as a whole, we get so caught up in what's going on outside of us, and we were never really taught to be concerned about just ourselves in the moment. We've always been concerned about, that's what we've been taught from children, to be concerned about your neighbor, especially Christians. You have to make sure the partner is good. You have to make sure your mama, your auntie, your daddy, everybody is good around you because makes you ultimately feel good and be a good human. Yes, we as humans, we want things to work out in society and we think that things should be a certain way. And we're drawn to it. We're drawn to be curious. We're drawn to be, most of us to want the right thing to happen that we feel should happen. So we get caught up in all the negative and we get consumed by it from traditions, family traditions, from societal traditions and norms of what we're supposed to do. And then we forget about ourselves. We forget about what's immediate right here in front of us.
And I think that's difficult for a lot of people. Like if I look at my life and I share the story how I had to cut off cable ultimately just to keep all the bombardment from maybe the negative aspects of the world. But so many of us, we engage in the world in different ways. So for example, I can go outside and be at a job where people are toxic. I can have family members that are unhealthy. I can have relationships that are unhealed, right? These are things that for a large part I'm choosing, but so many of us have to still navigate the world in that way. Unless we're just going to lock ourselves up in our bedroom and not see the daylight ever again, right? There are people that do that. But do you think sometimes that maybe we get addicted to the chaos in one way or another?
I think we definitely do. We show up and we want to know, we want to feel, and we want to belong and be part of the process. So we become addicted to it. Like we just have to hear it. It's like you with the cable. It was like me deciding, hey, I'm not going to watch the news except for this time. If not, you get sucked in. We become addicted to the drama and the trauma because that's what we're used to. That's what we've been taught. That's what we know. That's inherited, passed down. So we are addicted to it, but we get to choose differently. We get to stop getting caught up in the madness of it all. And this is the key, being able to take care of and change what we can.
Do you think that people understand that they have that type of power to do that?
No, no, we haven't been taught that. We think we're powerless. A lot of people, you think about people that didn't even vote. They didn't even think that they votes had ah, that it counted, that it mattered. So people think they're powerless and they want to argue and debate it, but you cannot debate things when you're not willing to make those steps either towards the change. We all have to be in this, but we first have to focus on us and what we know and educating ourselves and knowing the part that we play in it so that we can make a difference. We can't shape the world. We can't do anything different unless we're shaping ourselves, meaning taking control of what we absorb, what we believe in, what we have faith in, and then showing up in that and walking in that. Because if you're going in as a what is downtrodden and just consumed with all of that, you're angry. How can you think straight? How can I tell the women that I work with, if you're always fighting, how can you thrive? How can you show up? How can you give your all? Because you're already in battle.
I know. Tip deep breath, deep breath. Just
Yes.
woosah. It reminds me of Bad Boys, right? Martin Lawrence could just woosah it out,
Usai.
right?
Yes.
Woosah.
Yes.
Yeah. There was actually a coworker of mine. This was a few years ago. She had a concern that the way the world was working, her understanding was that there's probably going to be a shift between how women are seen and how men are seen because we absorb and we allow things differently in our life. Like many women would tell you that I'm an empath. I want to fix things. I want to heal this. I want to do that, right? They'll spend all this time and energy and resources on others. And then when you ask them, okay, when's the last time you did something for yourself? They're like, when was my birthday? Right? They're trying to remember when they did something that was a demonstration of loving themselves. Why do you think women in general struggle with that?
Honey, let me tell you, because it's just so crazy. I just sent an email out to my email list the other day, and it was about me. And I do this work every day and I help women through it. But I got so caught up and wrapped up in my job that I was going even when I was sick. And I had to do some work on myself, like what's going on with you? Why are you still showing up and not loving on yourself, giving you what you need? And what I came up with is I was caught up, me being in a male dominated industry, me being third in command, me showing up every day, me finally getting my flowers, them finally recognizing who I am, what I do, how I show up. I became addicted to that. I got so caught up, not in the power of it, but in being recognized finally and getting that in itself had me going to work sick, sick to the point where I ended up having to have minor surgery, you know, where I put my health aside because I was so caught up in being that great person. It wasn't so much that I was gatekeeping or didn't share, because the things that I told myself was, I need to be there for my team, I need to show up. So was I still looking for validation? No, but I was still wanting I was so happy with myself that I finally got everything that I was thought I deserved, that I forgot about me. So I think a lot of times that's what happens. We get caught up in different things. Some people get caught up in validation. Some people get caught up in being what everyone else thinks they should be. So it's different things, and it's learning what it is and asking yourself, why am I doing these things? Or knowing to ask yourself these questions. Because no matter how much work you do, no matter how much you show up, it's something that triggers that safe place in your brain that goes, you know what, this is a good place for you.
How do you, if you were to look back on that specific situation, how was your state of mind, your mental health before that? And how was it after that then?
My Let me think about that. But my mental health, I think my mental health was good, but I think, but it's better. It was good, but it's better now because I had time to sit with it and had an understanding where I was able to coach myself, work with myself to figure out, like, why did you do this? I was still making decisions, but I wasn't making decisions that were best for me. So it wasn't that I was in a bad state of mind or in need of. I was more so enjoying and embracing everything that I achieved and finally getting everything. But it has improved more so that I'm paying more attention to myself because I preach it, I talk about it. Self-love is is all that you can do some days. And a lot of times we get it mixed up, self-care and self-love. And loving on yourself is more important, but we don't know how. We know how to love everyone around us. We just don't know how to love ourselves.
What are some of the ways then we can figure out not only how to provide that to ourselves, but to make sure that we know the difference between self-care and self-love?
Oh my goodness. I was reading Bell Hook's book. This is Self-Love. I can't think of her exact name. I'm sorry about that, but we can figure it out. But self-love and self-care is different because self-care is giving those things like those spa days, those days where you make sure you're fed and you're clothed. And those are the things that we've been taught. And that's what sometimes when you're even in a family relationship dynamic, one parent gives the love, one person gives the care. And usually it's your mother that's caring and your father that's, well, in my home, my father told me how great I was. He talked love into my spirit, into my heart, where your mother wanted to make sure everything was taken care of. So that's the difference. Loving you is talking nice to yourself, being kind to you, knowing when to say, I don't feel well, and taking rest, keeping those small promises to yourself, showing up for you, saying no, Even if it feels unfamiliar to you and foreign, you still do it to protect your place. Putting those boundaries in place, those those are that is self-love in itself. Care is doing all the things to satisfy your needs, not your wants, but your needs.
If I look back on my life, there's a time where I struggled knowing the difference. And the reason why I struggled knowing the difference is because one, no one told me the difference, right? And two, I think with a lot of people, especially those who come from immigrant parents, your parents are working so hard, they may not be able to show you the type of love that you wanted. Going back to that book, right? The Five Love Languages.
Mhm.
So because I didn't hear it, I grew up wanting to hear it. And because I didn't hear it, but the substitute was someone buying me gifts, Christmas, but it had empty value because I knew it didn't mean much. As I grew up, when I would receive gifts, it didn't mean much to me because it reminded me of my childhood, where it was a substitute for love, but it wasn't out of love. So as I grew up, I realized that my love has to at some point come within, meaning that I have to be the origins of my love. And then when I extend it outwards, then I can have people love me in the way that I want to love me. But if I didn't have that revelation, if I didn't do that work, I don't know if I would have been able to ever achieve it because I think to care for yourself ultimately would lead to self love. But then when you're working with the women, when you're understanding the women who are maybe struggling with this, why do you then think that they spend so much time giving out the type of love they've always wanted to receive, but they don't ever stop to give themselves that same type of love?
That's what we call a return on investment. We think if we give it out, if we show up enough, people are going to do the same thing. For us, your love languages um, is what you've been taught, is learned behaviors and how you felt it when you received it. I don't think that I think people give you what they know how to give. And some people know how to give care because they believe that is love. They do. People don't give love, and understanding what love is to you is the key. And this is what I teach my clients, how to love on themselves and not outsource it, giving away to receive it back. You showing up and you giving your love away or what you believe is love, meaning that you washing clothes, say you in a relationship with and you the one cooking, cleaning, showing up, that's care. You're caring for a person. And that's how you show love. But is that what that person needs? And that's why it's so important to understand yourself, not just women, but men in general too. What do you need for self-love? Because then you can ask for it, or you know what you want, or what you're willing to accept and what you aren't willing to accept. And those are things that weren't taught because traditionally passed on, like you said, parents worked every day. Both my parents worked every day. They came home, they wanted to make sure that, we had food, clothes, went to the best schools that they could afford to send us to. They did all of those things. So that's what I thought love was, someone caring for me and taking care of those needs when I'm capable and able of doing that for myself. So I needed to know what love was. We don't know what love is because we never been taught, but taking the time to ask yourself, what do I give to other people? Why am I giving these things? Why am I showing up? For me, love is safety. And figuring out what you need and then naming it and defining it for yourself allows you to give it to yourself first. That's what self allyship is. That's what self love is and care. So you have to be able to define it for yourself. And that takes time daily going in, asking yourself the questions when you're giving someone something. Why am I doing this? Especially when you're unhappy doing it, especially when you don't know if you should do it, especially if it's not being reciprocated at all. And I know people say you shouldn't expect anything back, but if you're giving it and expecting something back, then we both know you need to ask yourself why and figure out what you need to stop giving it away in hopes of getting it back.
What are then some of the obstacles that prevents people from defining it and understanding that they can receive it back then?
Oh, the norms, traditions. This is what you saw. This is what you know. That's the biggest one. We don't know how to separate that. And if we never do the work on ourselves to understand that it doesn't have to be the way it's always been, that we can control what we allow in our lives. That's the first thing. And then it's easy. It's easy to get caught up in what you know. But what if we do the right thing that's hard, that's uncomfortable? People don't want to be uncomfortable. Who want to be uncomfortable? You want to be uncomfortable? You get in the seat and you switching and you're moving and you're doing all the things? No, absolutely not. But having the willingness to get uncomfortable, to figure out what it is and how to, and figuring out what value you bring. A lot of times we don't even think that we have any value. So how are we stepping into it? How are we figuring out if we don't think we have anything to offer but to give of ourselves, give our thoughts, our minds, our bodies, our souls to someone else in hopes of receiving it? But you think about it, if you learn when you learn to value yourself, you think differently, you show up differently, you walk differently. Um, I've been mentoring young girls in school. So they told me, Miss Harris, when you standing 10 toes down in it, I'll be like, yes. When you stand 10 toes down in it, when you showing up knowing that you're rooted in knowing your value and what you bring and understanding that for yourself and not looking for it outside of you.
Do you then believe that, or do you think that value is assigned to everyone at a very young age? And then as we grow, it can either increase or decrease? Or do you think that we have to obtain the type of value that we want?
I think it is at birth. We are given it at birth. But because of the way we're raised, depending on your culture, depending on your heritage, depending on the society that you live in, you aren't allowed to explore it. A lot of times we want children to sit, be still, be quiet. We don't tell them just to be good humans. We tell them to be who we think they should be and how they should show up. We don't allow them, or we stifle them, or we keep them. So it takes time for them to explore and to become. When we allow children to have a voice, to be open, to talk about things. And I'm not saying that they to have no type of boundaries for children. I'm not saying not to discipline children, may keep them from harm's way, but allowing them to explore freely and ask questions. They're curious by nature, but we stop it at some point. So there is value from day one, the day you were born. It is inherited in your life that you have it. And it's for us, adults and humans, to develop it as we grow and to help children do it.
If then value is born within us from birth, and I agree with you that we all have the potential for the type of life that we want and the value is instilled. How can we then, as we grow from teenagers to adults to fully functional contributors to society, minimize the events that can decrease our value?
I don't think we can minimize anything, to be very honest. But I think that we can work through anything that happens. Life is 50-50. When you wake up, it's good and it's bad. We want to say that things don't happen. That's why when things do happen in our lives, we have to have that joy place that we go to, that we lean into to get us through those times. But to keep someone from anything happening, that's like having control. And we don't have control over the things that happen. We have control on how we get through it, how we show up in it, how we walk through it. So us doing the work and understanding ourselves and loving on ourselves, believing in ourselves, trusting our own thoughts and opinions is key. As long as we're giving that away to someone else and having them make decisions for us, are we really getting through life, or are we just surviving?
That's a good point. And that reminds me of, no, it is because that reminds me of someone that I used to date and she hated being vulnerable and she hated giving up control because to her, she was always in control of her situation. But what was happening around her is that things were falling apart, right? Like her years ago before I got into the picture, her marriage fell apart, her situation with her children fell apart, her situation with her family, her parents fell apart. And for her, what bothered her the most wasn't the loss of these relationships. It was the feeling of being powerless. She absolutely had to have control in every situation possible. And that's why I asked that question, because when I think about your answer, I think about what she was going through, and she was trying to minimize every potential bad situation. But you
But that's what she
can't.
focused on. When you
Hmm.
focus on all of those things, when you focus on what could go wrong, what's not right, how is not, I'm sorry, I cut you off too. When you think about all of those things all the time, what are you drawing to you? What are you expecting to happen? You're not even allowing yourself enough time to yield and allow God to move on your behalf because you're so caught up in what's going to happen, what could happen. You haven't even painted a picture that was beautiful for yourself. So being able to allow what may happen to happen and know without a shadow of a doubt that everything is always working out for you and not happening to you allows you to walk differently, step differently, talk differently. Because you go in already knowing, oh, things happen, life happens, allow you to make a shift. It allows you to make a decision about the things that are perceived that aren't good. It allows you to work through it differently. But if you already going in thinking, oh my goodness, this the end of the world, nothing's gonna happen. I should have did this to control this, and this would have been okay. You're not leaving yourself any room for anything.
Yeah, it's like the person, they wake up in the morning and they're about to shower. 35% of people that shower slip in the bathtub as they're showering, right? And
Mhm.
then they get to their car. 25% of people this month died in a car accident. So in their mind, they've already conditioned themselves for the trauma. So when the trauma happens, they're like, okay, it's just another day in the park.
They already expecting it. They're already expecting all the bad things to happen to them. They're not leaving any room for good. They're not leaving any room for any blessings. They're not leaving any room for good to happen in their lives.
So let me ask you a question then, because this is something that I believe is it's their security, because maybe it's how they're protecting themselves, right? Because they want to prepare for the worst, so they say, okay, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So for example, they would get into, let's say, a relationship, or let's say they get into a situation, they're saying that, okay, um this is probably going to end in a year. So what they do is 9 months in, okay, I'm preparing for this fight, right? They're coming up with the chaos, right? They want to introduce it because they've already convinced themselves at this point in time is going to end. So do you think then people who always focus on the negative, who don't leave any room for the positive, are doing so because they know deep down inside they're going to sabotage the situation one way or another?
I don't think that they know it, they're conscious of it. It's something that's unconscious. They're so comfortable and know, and that's where their comfort lies in them being in chaos that they automatically go there. I have a friend of mine, she's no matter how good things are, no matter the day of the week, that's why I limit how I interact with her. Let me say that to be very honest. And she's a good friend of mine. But no matter how good she can win $1 million, she's going to create a scenario in her mind and in her heart that she absolutely believes because of past traumas, because of childhood norms, childhood situations, and that's where she's comfortable. Her joy is not comforting for her. Her chaos is comforting, and that's where she stays. And us learning and getting to the core and the root of why we believe what we believe will allow us to move and understand where we can recognize when it's happening. Like I recognized when, hey, I was showing up for this job because I was finally getting what I thought I deserved from them. And until we do that work and understanding that, stepping into it, talking about it, you're always going to have that place where you're just surviving. And I think as Black people, that's what we do sometimes. We just survive. And that's not enough. And that's not living. When we're always in that place of gloom and doom. We're more than that. And I think that's what's happening even in society today. We're seeing it come to pass. We expected this. So now we're seeing it and we're feeding on it. But we get to change the narrative in our own personal lives and how we see life.
Do you think that is impacting people at a younger and younger age these days?
Oh, yeah, because they have access to the internet. We talk about things so freely and openly with children. They are consumed with whatever we consume with. If we talk about it, they in it, they know more than us, and they done looked it up. They done talked about it amongst their friends, and they know what their parents' opinions are. I think that is good. Let me say this. I believe that because when I grew up, you wasn't in grown folks' business. Go sit down somewhere. You know, am I happy with that we're able to have conversations and make children aware? But I still think that we need to safeguard them from certain things. I don't think that they need to know and see everything. I think their minds are still developing, they're still growing, they're still processing. And no matter how much we tell them and fill them with things, they still don't quite get it or understand it. So we have to be mindful what we're pouring into them as well.
And I wonder how many children growing up, because they're growing up a lot faster than, let's say, you and I were at that age. Now, when they enter the world, when they enter school, when they enter the workforce, they're being hit in so many different ways. And maybe these children aren't equipped at that age to understand what they should take in and what they should just keep at a distance. Do you see them struggling with that part as well because they have access to so much more, but now there's an inclination to struggle when it comes to navigating the world at that younger age?
Of course it is. Because again, telling them, showing them, giving them all of these things, but when they have to really face it themselves and make these decisions, and they have already built up biases because of what they've been taught or the things that they have been directed or navigated to learn and to read, it makes it difficult for them. It makes it so much harder. And they stay to themselves. They resist anything outside of their norm. I think that's what we're doing a disservice for children.
I saw someone come into the office where I used to work. They were probably 19, 20 years old. And their view of the world was so negative. And I would ask them questions on why that is, because usually you get the impression that when someone is negative, something has happened directly to them. But this person is because of everything that they were engaging with online. And it gave them a perspective of how bad the world could be because they saw all the bad possibilities. So then when I asked them, tell me something positive that has either happened to you or that you've come across, and they struggled. And they struggled hard to come up with anything. And I look at that as like the algorithm of your life. Like what you enter, what you entertain, you begin to see more and more of it. But if you don't do the work, you can't rewrite that, right? As you work with women and men, do you see them coming into the session with you or the conversations with you with a view of the world that is so dark? You begin to wonder, did this happen to you or did you read about it or see it somewhere else?
It's inherited. Some of it is inherited. It happened and it's passed down generationally that we automatically feel that it has happened. So even though it didn't exactly happen, we feel it, we taste it because we've heard all the stories. We've heard all of the problems, the issues. So we believe it to be so. It's no facts. We have no data. We have nothing, but we know that it's going to happen. You think about, and I think about this often. You think about when you go back in time and mothers and keeping their children so tight and not letting them to go because of things historically that has happened to Black people, their children being taken away, or this or that, and all those things. This is inherited. So we automatically know to do this. We don't even know why we're doing it, but it's passed down. You know what I mean? It's just passed down. Street lights. Why the street lights? Because this has kept us safe. This is what kept your families together. This is what made sure that the men was home on time. Not because you ain't trust them, but because you wanted to know that they were safe. So this is what we do. Pass it down. Generational. Do things happen? Yes, they do. Why don't we feel safe? So we're not allowing ourselves to have anything positive because all we see is the negative. And I'm not saying me or you, I'm just saying in the world in general, a lot of people don't know how to get past those things that have been inherited, passed down unconsciously. And we get to change that. We get to do the work to understand that we can change that. But it's about getting to the core and understanding why we aren't doing it, why we aren't showing up, why we aren't giving up ourselves, why we aren't trusting. Where did this belief come from? We automatically believe it hands down because this is what's been going on 200 years. And this is what happens now in society. People, and you think about the way now, the smaller families, children aren't getting up. You think about the getting out. They pandemic happened. They're home. People are homeschooling. So all they have is the belief systems that was instilled in them by their parents, by their immediate family. So when they're thrown into the world and they have to come into these jobs, of course, they're afraid of certain people, depending on who they look like, their religions, their belief systems. So, of course, absolutely not. They are not allowing themselves to even believe that something possible that's positive is going to happen. They're not drawing anything in because all they're surrounding themselves with is negative.
I had that exact situation you just described impact to people that I know. They're friends, but I've kept my distance because of this behavior, and I've seen how it's consumed them in very unhealthy ways. And what was happening here in Canada is that they would watch the news and things like that, and they would paint a specific group of people as coming into Canada, taking their jobs and all this other stuff, committing crimes and all this stuff, right? It's on the news and everything. And they were getting caught up in it. And I would tell them that you have to understand how certain things work. And sometimes you have the propaganda machine that will spew out certain things about specific groups of people. It could be black men, it could be brown women, it could be whomever, right? It could be gays, it could be whatever the case is, right? Whatever the flavor of the month is, as I call it. And these two people, they would search and send this information out into the group chats. And I would tell them, I was like, here's the numbers, here's the stats on it. No matter how much you disproved what was going on, they were so deep in it that now, because these are people of color saying these things against other groups of color now, because everyone thinks, oh, the white man's racist. Not anymore. Not these days, right? So they got caught up in this to the point where they were using language that people would use back in the 40s and 30s that were deemed some of the most racist times. And even when you point it out, they would turn around and say, well, I'm not racist, but these people have to assimilate. I'm like, that's what racist people say. Like, that's how they talked about it, right? So, to your point, do you see some people getting so caught up that no matter how much you show them, they're still in denial of their behavior and of their perception of the world?
Of course. I mean, that's their human right to believe and think what they want. Then it's not for me to shift it. It's for me to stay in at my highest self. It's for me to stay aligned with who I am. I can't change, I can't shift them, but what I can do is not interact with them or limit my interaction with them. Do I believe that some people just are so caught up in their own thoughts that they can't see anything else? Of course. But I'm not trying to stop either people from feeling the way they feel. That's not my job. Not unless you come into me and you want to change it, then I'm here to work with you. I'm here to help you build your confidence, to stand up, speak up, be courageous unapologetically. But if this is your belief system, and I think that's what happens in society, we get so caught up trying to change and make everyone believe what we want them to believe or show them the facts of why it's not, that we spend so much time wasting our energy on them that we miss what we're supposed to be doing. We miss what direction we're going in, trying to change and shift somebody else. And guess what? That's not your business.
Amen, Samantha. I 100% agree. 100%. The reason why I do that is because I had a conversation with someone and they were so consumed by homelessness. Like, I gotta solve it, I gotta solve it. And I asked them the question. I was like, have you spoke to anyone that's homeless? They're like, yeah, a few times. I was like, you do realize that some people don't want to leave that life, right? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, you're projecting. You think everyone wants to be saved. You think everyone wants an idea change, right? But if you were to ask every single person that you think wants to be saved, there's going to be people that's going to say, no, I'm okay here. Why do you think some people struggle with the aspect of I'm going to assist when asked to assist instead of going around and trying to cure the world?
That savior complex that people have, that they got to save the world, that they the savior. It's what's ingrained in them. They think that they have the right. It's a control issue. You can't control anyone but yourself. And if you allow people to be who they are and ask for something, the results will come out so much better. We can kind of feel when someone wants something, and we can feel when someone is having a conversation, or but to actually know unless they ask for it, we don't know. We don't know what anyone wants unless they actually say, even though we can think it, feel it, have an inclination that they might. But it's that thing that we have, that savior complex, that we have to save someone. And it's not even about the person anymore. It's about how we feel. It's about how good we feel as humans when we save someone, when we make someone, or we didn't I tell you? Didn't I just do that? Didn't I go to work sick, about to kill myself? Come on, somebody. Like, think about it. Like, when you really put this in perspective, it was no longer about it was about me. And that's what happens with that savior complex, that they have to save somebody. I don't know if it's validating themselves, validating the world, or looking for validation from everyone. But we as humans have to stop and figure out why. That why is so important. And I know it's a big thing. Oh, why? Get you deep into it, get you down into it, some
That's a
understanding.
big question. A big question. Like, you can almost every situation, if not every situation, you ask the question why, it's automatically going to make the person think, right? You go around trying to save the world. Why? There's a reason why, right? Some people say it's a good of it. I'm like, okay, you think it's the good of it. Do those people think it's a good? Like, I'm a big proponent of asking the question why. Like, when someone comes to me, they say, Terrain, I want to be the best coach in the world. Why? Oh, I want to save people. Why do you want to save people? Like, there's a reason why you want to do this, right? Or on the other side, if someone says, well, you know what, yeah, my friends are this way, and they're abusers and they're cheaters, and okay, why do you hang out with them? There's a reason why you're around those people. There's a reason why you're attracting those types of people. Do you then think asking the question to ourselves, why am I doing X, is difficult for some people?
Yes, because who knows to ask themselves why all the time? No one. This is something me and you done learned. We done educated ourselves. We done went and took trainings. We got certifications, and we know that's a big question. But the average normal person doesn't know unless they listening to this podcast right here, right now, or working with you, or working with me, or some other professional to ask that question. We are doers. We are shower uppers. We are trained by nature to give of ourselves. We are trained from children to make other people happy. And when you're not doing it, some people might not feel that they're doing enough. They might feel that they need to do more. Or what is everyone thinking about me? Why am I not doing this? If they ask themselves anything, that should I be doing this? That should, they have to, keeps people moving and being in folks' business when they should not be, when they need to go sit down somewhere and take care of themselves and ask that question, why?
How long did it take for you to ask yourself that question?
Oh my God, it took me forever. It took me, to be very honest. Um, my father died in 2015, and I was sad. I went through a breakup and just a lot of things. And my mother got sick after that. So I'm gonna say about 2018. So way into my 40s, way into my 40s, until I really allowed myself to answer some of these questions. When I wanted to do the work, I was sad. I was between thinking I was marrying the man of my life, losing my father, my mother, cancer came back. I was gaining weight, all the things. And I knew that I wanted more, I needed more for me. And learning that in itself and being able to seek out the help, being able to seek growth, knowing that where I was wasn't where I wanted to be. And I had, because I was seeking, I found a coach. I found what I was wanting and learning how to love me and learning how to ask myself the questions. And I don't want anyone to think it happens overnight and all is well, because we as humans, we get caught up in our brain. And again, going back to our norm, what we have normalized in that place where we are comfortable, we go back there when a new situation arises. When we deal with the one situation, the mind has a way of tricking you and putting you in that same situation in a different way where you're still doing the work. But having the resources and having someone to help you work through it, grow through it, and glow through it. Because at the end of the day, you glowing, you feeling good. That is the key. We've been taught to be satisfied that this is enough, especially if you got some money in the bank and a nice place to live. That's enough for you because our ancestors didn't have that. But it's your God-given right to have as much as you want and go as far as you want to go in this world. But sometimes it takes getting to the root of it and becoming rooted in something that's better for you so that you can grow.
When you asked the question why at that point in time, after a number of difficult situations for you, what were your reaction to the answers that you found about yourself?
Honestly, I was sad. First, I was angry, to be honest. I was angry because what? I had all these attitude with myself, and not even. First, it was with everyone around me, and then I had to. Then I had attitude with me, and then learning how to forgive me. And it wasn't everybody would say you got to forgive someone else. I don't forgiving you, and that's what that why and getting to know you is for. And then I became sad, not sad because I wasted time, because sad because I was losing that person that I knew, which was me, and learning my new norm and learning me.
For me, when I first started asking those questions to myself, I became disappointed in others. And then I became frustrated with myself. And the reason why I say it in that order is as I started to ask myself the questions why, I realized the impact negatively the people around me was having. And then I became frustrated with myself because I realized I was allowing it. So
But you didn't
when I
know
had to,
better. But you
sorry,
didn't know better. But you didn't know better.
I didn't know better, but I didn't know better before I asked that question why. Now that I knew better, I was like, wow. Right? You know what I mean? Like ignorance was a beautiful thing,
You right about that. Like,
right?
you happy, you skipping, everything is light green when it's really supposed to be real green, green, but you okay with that because you don't know no better.
Yeah. I didn't know any better, right? But once I knew better, I was like, wow. And some of the disappointment was in people that were around me 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Like these were long relationships, but the quality wasn't there. And then to your point where you mentioned you felt sad, I felt sad because I knew that the changes I was going to make was going to put me in a situation where some people weren't going to make the journey with me.
Yeah. Um, I don't think I was sad because people weren't going to make the journey with me. Honestly, I was happy to be that, to be very honest. Want me tell you why? Because, baby, I was tired. Let me tell you, I was tired. I was exhausted because as a woman, and I remember my mother always used to say, you don't forget the bridge that brought you over. So, you know how long I was on the bridge standing still? You know how long I was pulling at folks to come? And when I was trying to make moves and then I go back to that same bridge that she told me I shouldn't forget, I was grateful. I was grateful. And I was glad that I finally was able not to forget the bridge, but to move past it and move forward.
Do you
It was,
think then that's something that women experience more than men?
yes, because we've been taught to take care of, love on, make sure the world is okay, that we're being good women, because that's what defines us.
The caregiver, the empath,
Yes,
the
yes,
healer, the fixer.
all the things in the empath, um, feeling what someone else felt because you already know that if it was you, you would feel bad, you would feel sad. We already know what we would feel if it was happening to us. So of course we want to be an empath and know and feel their pain when we're not even allowing ourselves to breathe because we're taking on everybody's everything.
Feeling the pain from everyone else, but not feeling our own because it's being masked by the demands of others.
Yes, are they demanding it or are we just taking it on? That's the thing.
That's
They
the
they
question.
that's a big one because people ain't asking you sometimes. We just automatically do. We've been conditioned to do that. We have been taught to do that consciously and unconsciously. Because you think about what the patriarchal system has taught us about a good woman, what they look like, what they taste like, what they feel like, how smart they are, how much money they should or shouldn't have, how much of a man they should believe in. And if you are good when you're giving up everything and making sure he good. So you do that automatically with everyone around you.
That's interesting that you put it that way because I'm looking at my current relationship. She struggled with that with the previous guys. And the reason why I know that, and you know what, I'm opening up here. And the reason why, and it's kind of strange to see because you have someone that is so used to, as you put it, right, making sure that this person's okay, doing all this other things, to their detriment. Because when she was sick, the same men couldn't assist her in the way that she was assisting them when they weren't as sick, at least from a physical standpoint. Emotionally, mentally, perhaps, right? So when I have these conversations with her and I'm healed, I've done the work, as you mentioned, right? We're professionals, we have the certifications. Sometimes she'll try to do things, and I tell her, it's like, you don't necessarily have to do that because I've already did this, right? It's like, okay, okay, how about if I, right? So, for example, we ordered food and I don't eat meat, right? But in a previous relationship, when she would order food, she always like gave food, like a lot of women do, right? Let me cook for you, let me do other stuff, right? So I'm eating my food and she's like, "Oh, do you want some of my food?" I was like, "No, it's okay." So she put it on my plate. So now I look at my plate, there's meat in my plate where I don't eat meat. Right? But in her mind, she's being helpful because that's what she was conditioned to do, right? So now I'm sitting here, this act of service has ruined my ability to eat my food.
But you think about that's what she was trained to do. Didn't even think she might be hungry later. She might want more. She thought more of you at that
Yeah.
moment. I remember, look, since we're being honest, I remember being in my past relationship and the way the house was set up, because we had air conditioners in the window. My I decided to lay on the other side. Normally in the summertime, in the wintertime, I lay in the front, but I know he was hot. He was hot natured. So let him lay on the side where he's going to get more air. And I laugh to myself now, damn, you let him breathe more than you breathe. That's how we were taught and conditioned to think that we had to care for someone else because guess what? We showing you how much we love you. We proving it by giving more. So we already automatically And not even that we expect a return on investment. We already know that it might not be, but we want to be labeled as good wives, good women, good girlfriends, good all the things instead of being good to ourselves.
Yeah, like there's that disconnect where you have to be good to yourself first, and then it's gonna come outward instead of you being good to everyone else and think it's gonna come inward. Like in my example, it was good intentions, but now because I'm eating it, I can't eat my food, so it produced a bad result. Where you had good intentions, but now you're like, I might die in this heat.
That's craziness when you think
It's
about
crazy,
it.
right?
What
Yeah.
we have done to make sure someone else is okay. And we didn't want to be seen as selfish or the thought of losing our fear. And I believe in this fear keeps us showing up differently. Fear of loss, fear of not being seen as good, fear of being thought of as less than capable or able, or, you know, fear of not having that person you love because they might find someone else that's going to do it for you. But when you start loving yourself, baby, it's a different lifestyle. It's a different change. It's a shift in you where the love that you show yourself is automatically given back by your partner. And I want every woman to know that no matter which way you look at it, turn it or twist it, when you start loving yourself and giving yourself, you're creating a norm. If you
Yes, yes.
hungry, yes.
And I tell men that when you're in a relationship that's healthy, you want your woman, I'm talking about heterosexual relationships now. You want your woman to truly know that she is the pinnacle of your day, right? Like it's your responsibility to make sure that you're not taking advantage of what she does, or she doesn't she feels like she's secondary in your world, right? Because I think unfortunately, um and this goes men and women, a lot of people have been taken advantage of either at the workplace, within their families, within their relationships. And as you mentioned, right, they may be conditioned to do these things. Okay, I gotta do to their own detriment. But they don't understand that once you start doing for yourself and understanding yourself, goes back to what we talked about, right? Full circle, self-care and self-love, your outcomes will be better. But sometimes I wonder, and I'll ask you this, Samantha, do you think that sometimes the results are maybe too far ahead that people can't see it? So they rather focus on the here and now versus preparing themselves for a longer, more sustainable goal?
I think, yeah, people look for the right now. They look for that gratification, immediate gratification right now. And then instead of living in that moment, then you have the other flip side of it where they're already living in the future where they don't see anything good happening to them. So it's about conditioning your mind to stay in the moment, but within staying in the moment means staying, being present in it, not just looking for satisfaction immediately, but allowing it to progress. Look, and cook slow, like on the stove, instead of in the microwave. That's the way I want to say it. You put it on low and you let it simmer and you see it produce and become what it's supposed to be. Or if you're a gardener and you plant a seed and you watch it peak up and watch it sprout and become. That's what staying in the moment is, and allowing the whole entire process and not getting caught up in the immediate gratification because you lose something in that. You lose the process. And the process and the journey, as people say the journey is so good sometimes.
I love that, especially the Gardner reference, because I'm the type of person where I love that journey and the process of it and understanding that there's a difference between growing your own garden with us with seeds and nurturing versus buying the plant's already there and you plant it and you just have to water it a couple of times because I'm so forward thinking where I mentioned a time where I was like, I want to retire early because I see the twilight of my life, 55 and older, with someone and enjoying life. Whereas another person said that I don't see a life where I don't stop working. Like they were like their life was they were born and they're gonna work until they die. They didn't see a Samantha in their life, a terrain in their life, right? But once it was mentioned to them, they're like, okay, how do I get that? How do I, and they give them examples like, what if you were to meet someone and they won the lottery or they started a business and they had $10 million, they couldn't retire. The person looked at me, Samantha, they're like, I I'll probably still work,
No, it's true because they
right?
don't know anything different. It is insane that they don't see past that moment. Like, all I know is to work. But again, these are things that have been passed down, inherited, that this is all their mom and their daddy did. This is all that they know. So they continuously show up the same way. Well, what I'm going to do now, a man that works in the department, he's 75 years old. He could have retired at 25. He's still working. What am I retired for? He can't see anything different outside of right now. And how do we get them there? How do we get them to understand that it's so much more? No matter how many times you paint a picture, no matter how many times you say, yes, this one is retiring, they can't see it. So is it my responsibility to try to make him see it, or my responsibility to me to allow him to be happy being where he is?
Yeah, and that's the question. Like, why are we mentioning that, right? It could be that, hey, have you thought about this? And then you make them decide. I think it's one thing to give someone the choice and let them decide whatever it is that they decide. But once you start to push it on a person saying that, okay, you should do this because you would do it, I think that's where you start to run into what we talked about, right? The savior complex.
I wonder, like, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, like you, like 55, I want to be retired. That dream, that you have, that you want to live this life. Is it something, is it because my mind is always curious that we were born with? You know what I mean? That the one thing we were born with? But again, I saw that. My parents retired early. My parents retired. Mom, my mother was 56 and she stayed an extra year. My father was in, 50 something when he retired. So these are things that I saw. So is it something that I want to do because I saw, or is something that I want because I know how good life is? I wonder now.
I wonder too, because I didn't see it from my parents because I didn't grow up with them, but I saw it in my grandmother who raised me, as well as when I was growing up in my teens and the different families I saw, because I had a diverse group of families that I spent time with. I saw it in there. Like they would always talk about it at the dinner table, right? Like that was their goal. And when I look at the other side now, I see people who want to not, I see some people who want to work that ways because they grew up in a situation where that's all they knew,
Yes,
right? And they don't want to be in a situation where they have to rely on someone because in the example I gave previous, right? Like when some people rely on others, they get let down. So they're like, okay, I might as well work until I can't work anymore, but I know that there's always going to be food on the table, a warm bed, because this person who wins the lottery, what if all of a sudden they find somewhere else? And I think a lot of people suffer from abandonment issues in that regard.
they do. And I wonder, like you and I, I saw it, you saw it, maybe not in your immediate family, but you saw it from other families. What makes us different? That nature nurture thing, that we wanted something different, or we leaned more towards that younger retirement. It's a different joy, it's a different walk, it's a different life. It's like us, which makes our clients come to us, what makes them want more. And I think tapping into that and understanding that will allow the world to open up and show up differently for themselves.
Yeah, it's like we were shown the positive, loving side of that, or maybe some other people were shown the dark side that we didn't necessarily come in contact with until we're much older in life.
Yeah. And it's a little like mind-boggling the way this world could just shape you, just the little things that we see. And we get to choose. And that's what we did. We realized that's it. We had a choice and we made a decision. We realized we had choices. Come on, somebody, talk about it. Understanding that we have a choice. And that's what we're getting away from. Understanding that we have choices. We believe, a lot of people believe, not me, not you, but that there is no choice. This is written in stone, that it is concrete. Because if you or I decide that we change our mind and we want to work until we're 100 because we love what we do, we know that we have a choice in it. People that's doing it automatically, that's showing up the same way, doing the same thing because this is all they know, it's because they feel they don't have a choice. And that is because they don't feel safe. If you don't feel safe, you're going to continue to do the same things you did yesterday. And the only way you can change that is to build your own security in yourself with love and care.
So it's like saying that they don't realize how much power they have because they don't realize that they have the choice. They can't see beyond their own actions, right? Like, okay, I've been doing this for the last 20 years. So I'm just going to continue to do it for the next 20 years. But then when you ask them, it's like, okay, you have a choice. How about this? It's scary. They're like, I don't have to do this anymore. It's like, no, right? It's like when you give someone an opportunity for something better and all they have to do is cross over the water, right? You see clear water, you see it's just a couple of steps over it. But when they look at that water, they see sharks, they see piranhas, they see everything bad waiting to do something to them. And I think sometimes you won't be able to assist with that mindset because they're going to have to identify it themselves before they can understand a choice is something that they do have.
That is so true. It's just allowing them to realize that they have that choice, allowing them to sit with it, answer those whys, for them to recognize that there is a why. That is the game changer. Game changer right there. That's that shift. That's that light bulb moment where we be like, oh, okay, I see you. You could go for it now. And giving themselves permission to know that they have a choice. Come on, somebody today.
Yeah, make the choice, everyone. You have the choice. I get it. I get it. I truly get it. Like sometimes you just feel like I don't. I don't have a choice to get up and go outside. I don't have the choice to make better decisions. I don't have the choice. But I think those people are so beaten down by the system, by society, that they don't realize it's like, yeah, you can be whatever you want to be. But it starts with you. Because if people way back when they were slaves and being beaten on and all this other stuff, like these days, if you don't have a choice these days, they definitely didn't have a choice back then.
That's right. And they made a choice that wasn't supposed to be this way. They wasn't supposed to live their life this way, that they wanted more. They felt that it was something more deep inside of them. They, not even that they were even just allowing it and not doing anything. They decided, they made a choice, they made a decision, and they stood in it no matter what it took to get there. And I think that's what's happening in this world that we're living in right now. People don't feel that they have any choices. That's what's drawing them. Now we're going back to the beginning. That's what's drawing them to all the chaos, to the TV, to the confusion, to the news, to the hatred, because they feel they have no choices. And we do have choices. And that's what everyone has to realize. There is a choice in this. And no one gets to make decisions for you. As much as we feel that we don't have freedoms, we do. And your freedom is in your mind. You get to stay free in your mind. Because as long as we're consuming and allowing ourselves to get caught up in all of the negative, crazy hatred, we are no longer free.
And people don't even realize that when they got caught up in that, it's because they chose to.
That's right. That's right. It's all of them being sucked in, pulled in, fear of the unknown. Fear is a mean man. I'm telling you. Fear will have you sitting somewhere in a corner, shaking, or like some people taking flight, like I'm getting my passport, I'm out of here, I'm going, or other people telling people how great they are. Oh, let me see, or some people want to fight. You think about it. We done talked about all of these things today. People fighting, talking about all the things, and everything comes back to feeling secure, feeling safe, being able to show up.
Yeah, it reminds me of that acronym, right? For fear, where it's like, was it forget everything and run and face everything and rise,
Yes,
right? Where you
yes,
have to
yes.
like figure it out. Like you can use it to empower you, or you can use it to dispower you, right? And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people use it the other way, where they're like, "Oh my God, it's change. Like change in itself is scary, right?" And I think I couldn't imagine someone who is changing and they find it so difficult, where maybe they suffer like an identity crisis, where they're like, "This person that I'm going to become, I can see that person, but am I going to be as accepted? Am I going to be as loved?" Or better yet, let's take it internally. Am I ready to become that person and face everything and rise? I don't know if there's people that can honestly answer that question when they're going through their struggle.
I think that's what happens, and that's what happens with a lot of the women that I work with. Now that you're saying that, a lot of the women, when going into these jobs where it's male dominated, where they don't feel they have a voice, they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they allow themselves to be consumed with the job, meaning that what the men think, what the men say, they feel that they're being labeled. They get so caught up in that in itself, they start to bend, twist, and become who they feel they should be in order to try to fit in, to be liked, to be loved, and it's all because of fear, meaning that they twist themselves up so bad they don't even know who they are. They get in their car in the morning, leave their house with their coffee, and they go in and they put on all these masks and they become who they're supposed to be. You don't even know a woman can change up her voice. Like me, I'm having this conversation with you, blah 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 blah. But hey, how are you? What's going on? Yeah, it's just like that. Could you imagine switching? It's so sad that we have to do it to feel that we have. That's the only that way that we can thrive in these companies and that in this world, especially as Black people. So learning how to unmask and stop switching is hard for some people because they're not sure what can happen. How are they going to be safe? How are they going to survive this? How can I actually be myself and not give all of myself? Be it in a relationship, be it in a job ship, be it in a friendship. And that's that survival mode. That's where we've been talking about going back generationally, going back culturally, going back societal, all the things, becoming who the world needs us to be instead of who we need and want to be. And a lot of times we don't even know who we want to be because we weren't given that opportunity. Because we become what the world says is a good human or a good girl or a good boy. We got to put them labels on it so people know and they want, because we don't want them get people to get mad because we ain't identifying the way they think. Everything is about what someone else says. We don't get to choose. And that's why people don't think they have choices anymore because the norm is to become a shell of yourself so that you can fit in, so you can get along, so you can survive. And surviving is a bad way to be because you're no longer living.
Let me ask you a question about that then, because I went through this. The women who are twisting themselves in this way, putting on these masks, are they happy with the avatar that they've created at their job places?
Absolutely not. That's why they all look for a place where or a community to talk to someone, to where they can just be themselves, where they can just take it all off. Honey, it's like going home, taking off your shoes and your bra where you can just be because you get tired. You're exhausted. You're mad when you come home. You're mad at when you're going into work. And then they wonder why women aren't skipping and laughing, or you're pretending to laugh at work so that Bob and Bill don't get mad at you and assume you're an angry black woman or a woman in general. So it's so many different layers to this. No, you may be happy for a while, especially if you're making more money, if you're growing in the company, but that becomes exhausting. You're exhausted by the end of the day.
I say that's fleeting as well, right? I couldn't when I first got into the corporate job that I'm in, I really wanted to impress because I had these this notion, right? I'm like, okay, at the time I was a black man, beard, dreads, and I was fairly young, right? So I was like, okay, I need to impress, right? Because I'm putting this stress on myself. No one said anything, right? But my view of the world was I am told that there's certain things about certain types of people that are in a way frowned upon, for lack of a better word. So when I would go into work, I would present myself a certain way. But to your point, after a while, it became exhausting. And then after feeling exhausting, what happened? I began to feel frustrated. And after frustration, started to feel anger, right? Because I'm upset now, because I'm pretending. This is not necessarily who I am. So I wonder how many women that you work with, when they're doing this, the longer that it goes on, how detrimental is it to not only their mental health, but their health from a social aspect as well?
Oh, they end up, it's very detrimental because they end up isolating themselves at work and outside of work because people don't understand why they're changing, why they're no longer happy, why they're no longer the person that they are. They start to have health conditions because they have high blood pressure, they have heart disease, all of these things because of the added pressures they put on themselves because they want to fit in at a job that doesn't want them, a job that doesn't believe that they're in the right place, the job that they're fighting every day for respect. And I tell my clients, it's you leaning into your own self respect, it's you tapping into writing down all your accomplishments, all your wins, and knowing who you are. That keeps you grounded and not falling into the trap of who they think you aren't and the value that you bring. This is so important. And because it causes you that mental stress where you're sad, you're anxious, you're crying, you know, it gives you a sense of unworthiness. That's why so many women leave jobs that are male dominated because they don't feel they belong. And it's hard enough going to work every day, getting up, the added pressures that jobs are putting on you as a woman, as a human. And then men, when they see you the only woman, they think you're supposed to do all of your work and all the menial tasks. God forbid it's a coffee cup. Oh, you didn't pick that up? Oh, you didn't put that out? So then you have to safeguard yourself at all times. So you always have this band of protection or this guard up. And it makes you sad because I've been there. I am that person. It makes you sad that you're just showing up every day, giving all that you have, and not getting the respect. So it wears you down. It wears you to the point where you don't want to be there. Or, like me, when you get it, you want to hold so tight to it and say, basically, like I told you so, I'm in your face. So it's detrimental women mentally, physically, emotionally when this happens.
One woman I work with, she was going through something like that, and she was always tired and she couldn't figure it out. Like there's times where on her day off she would sleep for hours. She'd probably sleep until let's say 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. And then there's times where she was like always sick. And I asked her the question. I was like, how much of that do you think is your work? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, when you're at work, you're go, 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 all these demands. You're trying to solve everything at your job. And when you come home now, You're staying up a couple of hours. Let's say she finished at 12 midnight. You stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning because you can't sleep. Your mind is still racing, still in work mode. But on your days off, you're sleeping for almost the entire day. I was like, your health is being impacted. She's like, well, I need to work because you know what? I want the extra money and stuff like that. I was like, okay, but if you work yourself silly, I'm like, if you were to work yourself like this and you die tomorrow, how soon do you think you will be replaced? I'm like, that's the way you have to look at it because you're giving your all, and I get it. We've all been there. You're giving your all. But like anything in life, you want somewhat of a balance. I'm like, if you were to have a more balanced approach, I'm like, your job will continue on. Do you know why? She's like, why? Because it was still there before you got there. It will be there after you get there. Why do you think so many women have a maybe difficult time understanding that they can work hard, but they also have to work smart, especially when it comes to their health, because the company will continue to go on with or without them?
They have a hard time because, first of all, it's hard, especially the industry that I work in. It's hard for us to get the positions. It's hard for us to be seen as competent and qualified. So when you're there, you're always on 100. You're always on go. And the thought of not being able to show up, not being able to give 100% of yourself. I coached a woman. She was a supervisor for skyscrapers, the doing the inspection, and she had a lung problem that she needed to take care of. That she almost killed herself because she didn't want to seem that she wasn't able to show up because she didn't want the men to label her because they already think you're not qualified, that you're already being given an opportunity that you didn't deserve, not that you didn't earn it, not that you didn't give up, because you already know us as Black people, we have to show up 10 times is better to get jobs. So you think about a woman going into these jobs where we have to show up 10 times, 12 times, 13 times more. So we're more than qualified, but we're still afraid of not being given other opportunities or being labeled. So that's what keeps us going when we don't want to go. That's what keeps us moving when we don't want to. Us just taking a break, God forbid we might miss something. And what could happen? They might give it to somebody else. And then some women start gatekeeping because God forbid they bring another woman in. Now it's competition. Now they putting us against each other. We can't be qualified. We both can't be this. So it's a lot of variables in this. It's not just one thing. It's a lot of things. And understanding what's happening is allowing women to understand where they are and then to recognize I don't have to be there all the time. I don't have to give myself. I can take a break. This is not my beginning and end. This is not my alpha and omega. I get to show up and do the work and give what I can and know that I'm bringing enough, and I'm no longer proving myself or looking for that validation or looking for someone to say good job, because that's what we still look for, a lot of us. Good job, well done. You give it to yourself. When you start being able to qualify yourself, then it doesn't matter. You're no longer showing up the same way. You're no longer giving the same way.
I think I call that like the pat on the head. You know, like when I don't know if
Yes.
you ever owned a dog, right? You're like, good boy, good girl, right? Yeah, right on the pat on the head, right? Um, is it hard then for some people to not want the pat on the head or the proverbial carrot?
Yes. Because we all have children. That's how we raise children. We do. It has been instilled in us. We children want to see us smile, want to see us happy, want us to say you did a good job, good boy, good girl, you know, getting rewarded. We have been raised and instilled in us. It's crazy that this is is embedded in us and we don't even know that. And when we do anything different, we think about, if no one else thinks it, we think of ourselves as being selfish. We think of ourselves as not giving enough. We call ourselves lazy, shiftless. And all of this has been beaten into our ancestors, which has been beaten and passed down inherently to us unconsciously. So this, especially women, because well, caregivers, nurturers, all the things, let us not show up that way. Let us not give. You know how bad we feel about ourselves? Well, not me no more. It is what it is. You get it? Listen.